and gentlemen.
You are now tuned in to Mastering Mitzvahs. Mastering Mitzvahs. A podcast focused on creating the perfect bar and bat mitzvah celebration, offering tips, tricks, and trends to ensure an amazing event. Mastering Mitzvahs. From New Jersey's own Explosive Entertainment. Explosive Entertainment.
I know you're gonna dig this.
And here they are, your hosts, Dylan Weissman and Mike Langser.
Yo.
Hey, so do you want to open this one or should I?
Well, I mean, Happy New Year.
All right, let's start there. And there was big debate yesterday. At what point in the year do you stop saying Happy New Year? So we're recording now on the 13th of January. I've seen you at least a dozen times since, so I don't think it's Happy New Year to each other.
I'm going to go with, if you're saying it at the end of this week, it's too much.
Okay.
But I don't know. I guess for me, if you haven't seen someone since the previous year before the holiday season, you kind of say it as well. I don't know. I saw a photographer that I haven't worked with in a while, and I said Happy New Year to him this weekend. So I don't know.
I think a fresh face up until the end of January, it's all good and fair. So Happy New Year to you, Dylan, even though I've seen plenty of you.
Yeah. Well, it's a good one, man. 2025. It's a good one. But now we got episode 148 lined up here. And, we're taking feedback and taking suggestions about some topics to cover. And one of them was, can we get more mitzvah parents on to talk about their experiences? And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to bring in just a moment, a super special bat mitzvah mom of ours, who did two events with us, one for her son and one for her daughter, all within the last 3 years or so. And I think what's going to guide this conversation that'll be really relevant to a lot of us is going to be something along the lines of, how do you plan two different events for two different kids all within this amount of time? And I think that a lot of families are in this type of boat. So without further ado, let's bring in Andrea and say, hey, Happy New Year to Andrea.
Hi, Happy New Year to both of you. I'm so excited to be here. And I wanted to share quickly that it was actually this podcast that brought me to Explosive Entertainment. I don't know if you guys even remember this, but I was asked to help plan my twin nieces' bat mitzvah. They live in an area where they attended multiple events, and I wanted to learn quickly the pulse of the mitzvah, kind of world. And so I binge listened to all the episodes. And then I got to know you guys. I got to know what you were all about and professionals and all of that. And then when it came time to plan my own mitzvah, here we are.
Wow, I forgot that story.
Yeah, I figured I needed to share that as I'm being interviewed on the podcast, because it truly was the podcast that drew me to you. So if there are any listeners out there that haven't booked anyone yet, take for what they're saying. They're the real deal.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thanks for reminding us. Sometimes we need to be reminded why we do these podcasts. We hope to put them out every week, and then it became like a every 2 weeks thing. It's a little bit more haphazard now, but we're trying to get back on a routine.
Wow.
So
it's important.
Look, we're a huge fan of yours for a lot of different reasons, but I think the most important one is, and we said it on this show before, when planning a celebration, you gotta not lose sight of the kid that you're planning for. And you have two different kids, both wonderful in their own right. You have an older son and a younger daughter. And I want you to give like a super, super abbreviated Cliff Note version of what each of those celebrations looked like in comparison. So you had Jonah's, and then you had Sienna's. Tell us a little bit about them.
Okay, so Jonah's was at the tail end of COVID. He was one of the very last mitzvahs. And when thinking about him, he was interested in sports and dancing, but we also had to take the COVID component into play. And so we did a Havdalah service for him, and we thought that we were going to do a party right after. But because of the location that we chose, Topgolf, it just didn't make sense to do the party right after. So we did the party the next day on Sunday, and we had Top Golf, and we wanted to also have that traditional kind of event dance experience too, because that was important to him as well. So we had Explosive Entertainment doing their thing in the private room as well. And then for Sienna, she is the very first one in her age group. We just celebrated her mitzvah this past November, and she was the very first one. And her friend group outside of her camp friends, a lot of them were not Jewish, had never been to a mitzvah. And so we took that into consideration also. And because Jonah had a 2-day event, she wanted Havdalah service with a private dinner after, and then her party the next day to spread out the excitement. And she is, her theme was one hectic night and hectic on the dance floor. She's a hectic kid. She just is full of energy and wanted it to be like a nonstop raging party on the dance floor. And you guys brought it for us.
Wow. That's a perfect Cliff Note description. And there's so much to unpack there. God, I have so many different directions I want to go, but I think one of the things I really want to hit on is the importance of knowing where your son or daughter falls in the cycle of their friends. Like, I'm glad you pointed that out. Dylan and I talk about that often on podcasts. If your son or daughter is first versus last in their grade to have these parties, it looks differently and it feels differently. So aside from the fact that you had two different, kids with different personalities, where they fell in the cycle was really different.
Yeah, so Jonas actually was one of the very last ones also. So not only was it during COVID, he was one of the very last ones. And just something that's important to our family is we like to do things a little differently, and obviously focusing on what the kids are interested in and highlighting that. But I'm all about different elements of surprise, and again, not afraid to try something different. So when we were also looking at venues, we were also sensitive to, for Jonah, not only the fact that it was COVID and wanted a COVID friendly venue, but also just something different. And so that's when we went with Top Golf. And no one in his friend group had done that before. Also, a lot of them had backyard events. But when we were first considering even different venues, we wanted something different from the get-go. Sienna's was the very first one. And again, similar to that, what could we do that kind of, was unique to her personality, but also a comfortable venue that kids that had never been to a mitzvah before could kind of, roll in and engage with and all of that.
So I want to start with your kids, and we've been fortunate enough to know them for forever now. How involved were they in those decision-making processes, both Jonah and Sienna, and how did they differ?
So it's interesting. And I'm not all about like the sexist thing, boy, girl, but there is some things that are unique to maybe just in my situation, a boy and a girl. So Jonah was involved in that. He wanted to know, the different colors. He wanted to be involved in the logo. For him, we did this huge collage backdrop that kind of laid the foundation for everything that we did. He was very involved in that. And then it was kind of, the rest was left up to me and my husband to kind of plan. Sienna, again, she was very involved in her logos. She was, wanted to have a hand in the swag. And then the only other thing that she truly, really wanted was, we knew that she wanted high energy because that's just her whole personality. And one of the slogans was YOLO, you only live once. And that is just her motto. And so she was involved in some of that. And then her only request was that the photo booth, that she wanted a very specific photo booth. And beyond that, we took into consideration what was important to both of our kids, but we tried to kind of have them be on the outside and focus on the religious aspect, focus on their training of like becoming a bar bat mitzvah, and then leave the rest up to us as parents. Because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for us as parents to plan from an emotional and financial standpoint and all of that. And then you're talking about 13-year-old kids that are searching on the internet and looking at who did what. And their thoughts change on a daily and they don't understand, we have family values and of course talk to them about finances, but they really don't fully understand the full component that goes into it. So that's kind of a little bit about that.
No, it's great. And I think that it's important to understand that your kids are, especially with two different kids, you're going to have them find different things that are important to them. And I guess for me, if I were in that situation, and I mean, fortunately, I'm not yet, my kids are super, super little, but like, I can imagine that their personality needs to be on the forefront of the idea segment, but you also got to figure out a way to reel it back down to reality. And I think that you guys did a really nice job of navigating that for them. Were the kids, I imagine that there's probably times you have to say no to these kids. How do you tastefully, tactfully let them know that this isn't a possibility?
I mean, it's hard. And I think it's getting only more difficult with the number of events that they attend and social media. So social media is great for this and for marketing and showing the parents, but showing the kids, it's like a disaster sometimes, because even up to when we were trying to figure out the photo booth aspect, she was starting to change it at the last minute. And I said, no, how it works. Like, we have deadlines and we have to adhere to deadlines. And then going back to even just the photo booth, that was a more significant cost than we had initially budgeted for. We had budgeted for a photo booth. Jonah had the roving and we had one idea of what we wanted, but this was like the one thing that she really, really wanted. And so we had a conversation and we said, okay, if this is something that truly is, a must-have for you, then we need to talk about the other things, the extra swag that you want to throw out on the dance floor, the extra people that you want to invite. And so I think that it's important to just have conversations and talk to your kids about money. Like, this is a perfect opportunity to explain to your kids, like, this is an expensive experience and we want you to enjoy, but this is a perfect opportunity to let kids know about finances too.
I might be jumping to what should probably be our last question, but I'm just going to ask it now because it's so relative. I only have one child. So is there any sense of jealousy between the two over like whose party looked or felt differently? And or how do you navigate that so that it seems equitable, even though in reality, one probably did cost more than another? Like, is there equity amongst the children, or do they not understand the financial piece of it? How do you accomplish that?
So they do understand the financial piece. Jonah is now 17. He's a junior in high school. His mitzvah looked different. I mean, it was perfect for what we wanted to do for him, given that it was COVID. His mitzvah was half the size of what hers was. And so when we were starting to plan, we had like 75 people at Jonah's and it was incredible. And it was what we wanted to do for him, given, the circumstances of everything. And then hers was twice the size. We had to bring in everything because of the venue that we chose. And we allowed him on the back end to kind of be more involved than what Sienna actually knew. Like, he knew some of the surprises, and to kind of, again, it wasn't a matter of is it fair or not, because I think we just, as parents, that's a really hard thing to navigate. I mean, that's a whole other topic, and I'm a life coach, so I could talk about that forever, but that's not the point of the mitzvah. But I think we do what we can in the moment for our kids, not trying to think of what's fair, but what makes sense for this party, for this moment, for our family. So I think as people are kind of navigating that, you got to be careful not to compare one to the other, but just.
Yeah, I know it's a difficult question, and I hope I phrased it in a politically correct way.
Yeah, for sure.
I often wonder when parents have multiple kids, if one kid gets jealous over the other one's party, or they're just so excited about their own day. It is what it is. I love that you had different venues, and I love that. I mean, Dylan and I talk about both of your parties pretty frequently because they both stand out in our minds. Neither of which were, a run-of-the-mill typical party. They're both so great in their own right. So it's just interesting to see how siblings may react or feel about each other's party, if they even compare.
It's hard to say because, again, I don't think Jonah outwardly said anything. I do think I, as the parent, am a little sensitive to it because they were so different, and his was during COVID and the circumstances were different, and the family that could not attend his party was different. We had family for Sienna's, cousins that we hadn't seen in 5 years were able to come to Sienna's and celebrate with us for the whole weekend. My aunt and uncle, Sienna and Jonah's great aunt and uncle, were able to come in for hers. They weren't able to come in for his. So I don't know if it was the actual party where there was some jealousy, but there could have just been jealousy on the sheer number of guests that were able to celebrate and show up. But he just was a rock star the entire time and was just so proud of Sienna, so into the whole thing, knew that this was a really special time for our entire family, and just showed up because that shows the relationship that my kids have with each other. So there's always going to be jealousy, and he didn't express it to us. But I think that he just was so excited for her. So
that's great.
That definitely was true. I mean, I looking at it from the MC point of view, like I saw pride that Jonah had for Sienna. So it was true. And that's a testament to your family dynamic. What's something that you learned during Jonah's planning that helped you get ahead of the game for Sienna's?
Something that I learned from Jonah's. I think streamlining the amount of vendors. And I also think leaning in on the people the professionals that you bring in, and choosing the ones that you can trust. And so that's why we used you again. We used, a lot of the same professionals because I knew that there was a level of trust. This is an emotional and financial roller coaster for sure. And you need to also be able to lean in on the professionals. I have an event planning background. I mean, it was like many chapters ago, but even still, when it's your own event, there's a lot to navigate. So I think that that's something that I learned is when you pick who you're choosing, limit the amount of people and choose the ones that you genuinely can trust and lean on, and have the ability to tell you when you need to rein it in. So for example, I think it was, I don't know, almost in the 11th hour, Mike, I had a conversation with you. Do we need to add more to the cocktail hour? We had extra kids coming and I just didn't know how they were going to navigate it. And of course, everyone's in, you're in sales, and I completely understand that, but you're professionals and you want the event to unfold in such a way for your family. And so I was able to lean on you, and you said, this is great. It's going to be a great experience, but you don't need to add anything else because there's enough. So I think that was something I really learned.
I think one of the teeters that we fell with, the planning together is we often talk about stuffing too many things into the box. You had a 4-hour party and we already had a lot going on. How many more things can we add to it? While there were other great concepts that we considered, at some point, some things make it to the chopping board. But I know I wouldn't have done anything differently. And I wonder if you would have now after, finishing Sienna's party.
I definitely wouldn't have. And again, I think something else that I had learned is, like you said, there comes a point when it's just too much. And I'm not talking about over the top stuff. I think both of our events were done tastefully for our own family values, and we had a lot going on, but everything was chosen intentionally to make a certain kind of impact. So
got it. You said the word surprise before. You had surprises for Sienna, you had surprises for Jonah. I think that's interesting. I want to talk a little bit about that, and what were these surprises, and why did you choose to have them as opposed to involving your kids in advance on every detail?
Again, we tried to keep our kids and our family values and their personalities at the forefront when we were planning. But again, they're kids. And so they don't know how it's all going to unfold. Quite frankly, even though I was in the event business, I didn't even know, quite frankly, how it would all come together. And so the reason why we wanted to keep some surprises is it's already overwhelming for them. And also, I think that there's just something fun to see that let them enjoy just as they're a guest at their own party. And so we wanted them to feel that way. And so for Jonah, we had a special autograph ball during his the speech that we gave to him. And that was a big surprise. For Sienna, we had Love Nicole from Jersey Girl chocolates, the chocolate cruiser come in to get hectic on the dance floor. She had no idea about that. The Andy's cake jars, we talked a teeny bit about that because she went to the store in New York City with me, and I'm asked her, the owner, when we were there, oh, this is a cool concept. Can you come to bat mitzvahs? But she didn't know that I actually hired them. She didn't know all the little details. Again, let them be a guest at their own event. I mean, that's, I think, what is the surprise element of it.
I never considered the guest, your own event from the kids' perspective. We talk about it from the parents' perspective, but I really like that mindset for the kids because sometimes they know too much and it gives them pressure that's unneeded.
Exactly.
It lets them really just, be the star without the pressure. Yeah. I mean, Mike, I know we have a few more here, so why don't you take one and I'll take one and we'll wrap it up.
All right, Andrea. You very intentionally found two different venues, and it's because you have two different kids and you have two different times. I mean, the COVID time that just kind of flip-flops all common sense out of proportion. But a lot of families, when they find the right venue the first time, they stick with it. Just like you said, you stuck with a lot of your vendors. Now, as a parent who's gone through this, did you find struggles and hurdles in reinventing the venue for the second time, or would you encourage a family to do a different venue? Take COVID aside. Let's say somebody had a party today and then they had another sibling a year from now and they had a great experience the first time. Would you encourage them to stay at the venue or plan differently?
I think that's a hard question because I think if you're comfortable at a venue, but that you can make sure that you're still 100% focusing on each individual child's needs, then go with the venue that you feel comfortable with. Because if they did a good job, that's one hurdle that's already taken out of the equation, because just executing an event takes so many different pieces to make sure that it's run smoothly. But if you're literally going to have a rinse and repeat, a Mad Lib, let me erase the names and let me just dump in, the new logos, then find a different venue, because then you will go back to, like we talked about earlier in the conversation, the comparison aspect. So how different am I really making this for my child? Am I just doing a rinse and repeat, or am I able to really make sure that my child, their interests, their needs, their personality is shining? So I guess it's kind of, if you can do that as a family and make sure that at this very same venue, each child is a rock star and it looks and feels completely like your child, then go with it. But
I asked that question specifically. I could think of a family I'm working with right now that did choose a different venue the second time around, and they have concerns about the second venue meeting the mark that the first venue set. First venue set the bar really high. They would have liked to be at that first venue a second time. It just wasn't available. But I think 50% of our clients that are repeat do, stay at the same venue if they had a good experience, and 50% really want to start with a fresh drawing board. So that's interesting.
I mean, no knock on venues at all, but that's the kind of backdrop. It's up to you to kind of fill it in and to paint a canvas that represents your child. So it's through the entertainment, through the planning with both you and Dylan and the MCs and the just everyone involved to then make that child shine no matter where the venue is.
Dylan, I know you're going to wrap, but I have one thing to piggyback this. So interestingly, that you seem to feel pretty strong about finding a different venue, but you chose the same MC, and Dylan's right here in front of us.
So be nice.
Yeah. But sometimes that's a question also, like, should I have a different DJ? Should I have a different MC? Should I have a different DJ company? Rarely do they find a different company if they're happy the first time around. But I'm going to hopefully not answer this on your behalf, but I know you had a level of comfort with Dylan, and I believe he delivered a very different show for Jonah at Topgolf versus Sienna at 18 Label. I mean, just what chose you to keep the same MC?
Sienna. She specifically said, Mom, are you getting Dylan to do my party? Because again, we know you, Sienna knew you, and that was something, yes, there's, again, we talked about element of surprise, but for her, you're the run of the show. And then she wanted to make sure, is Michael coming? Do we get, the dynamic duo and all of that? That is that makes or breaks an event, is who is leading it. And she felt comfortable with that. And so of course we felt comfortable. It was like a no-brainer. I was already in the back of our minds. We were already choosing both of you, but it was just right after Sienna, she said, are you booking mine with them too? So awesome. There you go.
It is special for someone like me who gets to see the kids as they grow up. Cause we meet Jonah when he's 10, 11 or so, which makes Sienna even younger. I mean, that's a lot of time to spend with a family. So from an MC perspective, it put me in the shoes of a family member hosting another family member's celebration.
We also met Jonah at 5 foot, and now he's
I was just going to say that. Now he's 6'1". So yeah.
So it made it special for us. It felt a little, I felt the magnitude of that relationship in our events together. I know that it's so challenging to plan one event, let alone two events for any family. Is there one piece of advice that kind of kept you in line this entire time that we can then share with our viewership?
A couple things. Lean in on your professionals. You hired them for a reason, and you want to build that trust. And if there's anything, they've heard it all. And when they're professionals, they're going to keep it kind of between you and the professional, family dynamics, financial things, whatever it is, understand that. And then also understand to keep your family kind of unit intact, because it's extremely emotional, both, from emotional and financial standpoint. Pick and choose when you talk about this. This is a really exciting time for your family, but it is not the only thing that's happening in your family, especially if you have other kids that are at play. Find a time when it's time to talk about the mitzvah, and then talk about the other things in their life. And I'm not, again, undermining anything that you guys produce or that we're doing for our children, but keep it in check. And I guess that's kind of what I'd say. Keep it in check and rely on your professionals.
I love every bit of that. Find the right times to talk about it, but don't let it consume your life. It'll definitely bring a little bit of gravity back to the situation. So that's great. Well, I mean, we're right now at our time marker, but Andrea, I want to let you know that we are such a big fan of you and your family. And I want to find another reason to celebrate with you guys, because
I'm not having another kid. One kid's going off to college. So maybe we'll do a rager graduation party.
Okay. Whatever.
I'm not 50 yet. Brad's a little closer to 50. So maybe we'll do that. And then we've done some corporate things. So, there are other ways that we can continue to celebrate, but, at their weddings, but not for a while. Maybe we'll have a bar mitzvah for Snoopy, but no, we will continue our relationship. I continue to plug you on every single Facebook group. And when I write how amazing you guys are, it's genuinely from the heart. I don't promote people that I can't stand by. And you're just both truly amazing humans that, yes, again, you're in the sales, but it's not about that. You truly care about the families and their experience. And so for anyone listening, book them, do it.
Well, we love hearing it. We're so glad that you have just such a great memory about these things, and I'm hoping that it lasts with you guys forever. We're gonna wrap it up right here, Mike. First episode of the year, not too shabby. Hanging out with Andrea, it just gives us a lot of perspective on a lot of different topics. So if you have a topic that you want to cover, reach on out, let us know. This is a byproduct of you guys reaching out in the past. So thank you so much. On behalf of everyone at Explosive and Andrea, that's Mike. I'm Dylan. This is Mastering Mitzvahs. And until we see you next time, take care.
Thank you.